And we're live. Sorry if there was a bit of a delay at the start there, but thank you very much indeed. Good morning and welcome to the Cadence Innova Teams overview session. I'd like to say thank you very much for you taking the time to join, whether it's live today at 10 o'clock on the 31st of March in the UK, or whether you're watching a recording of this, then I hope that the session is helpful for you. We've got about 45 minutes to get through quite a lot of content. I'm going to be going fairly quickly. But let's do a quick little bit of housekeeping before we get started. I'm joined on the session by my colleague Louisa Serban, who is going to be helping with Q&A and questions and answers. Let's have a look and see quickly from a housekeeping point of view what things are looking like if you haven't used or attended a Skype broadcast session before at all. So we're going to be looking at some housekeeping, and then we'll run through the introduction and go through the Teams desktop and Teams mobile app very quickly. We're going to be looking at some of the common features, the presence, chat and activity feed type stuff, then quickly looking at meetings and calendar, and then some other pieces that add some functionality to Teams. And don't forget, there are some other webinar sessions back at the page where you joined up for this one. If you want to have a little bit more of a deeper dive into Teams meetings, perhaps, or using Teams to collaborate, then please do join us for some further sessions coming along. I wanted to take a little bit of a time just for a quick bit of housekeeping in a broadcast, as I say, if you haven't attended one before. So you should be seeing a nice broadcast window, which is displaying what's coming out through the session, which should be really quite helpful and hopefully is making a bit of sense to you. So just looking around the top of this window, at the top left-hand corner, it's telling you what the name of the broadcast is. In the middle of the window, you're seeing what we're broadcasting, which at the moment is some slides. We can go into a live session and break out as often as we like. Down towards the bottom of that window, particularly if you move your mouse, you'll find you've got some controls to pause the broadcast. That doesn't pause me, that I keep on going, but you can pause and rewind if you want to go back over something at any point in time. Next to that pause window, if you're watching live, you'll see there's a little live button. If you click that live, if you've paused it, that'll take you to where we are live in the session itself. Just over to the right hand side of that, you'll see you've got some controls for volume or mute, so you can turn it up and down. If the window's a little bit small, you can use that diagonal arrow to make it a little bit bigger as well if you want to. Just towards the top, slightly over to the right hand side, you'll find there are a couple of links at the top of the window. One is for support. That's for Skype broadcast support if you're having problems viewing the session. What I would recommend is if it's coming up and having any errors, I'd suggest closing and refreshing your browser may do the trick. And of course, every time you come into the link, you can start from the beginning or wherever you want to get started on. Next to that support link is a link to our Cadence Innova website. If you want to find out a little bit more information about us, or you want to find out some more information about what we're offering to help people through this difficult time from a business continuity and remote working point of view, then please do click through to our link. On the right hand side, you've got a window that shows you questions and answers, and you can put your name in at the top if you wish. You don't have to if you don't want to, if you want to ask anonymously, and you can type in your question and press ask or ask anonymously. That will post a question through to us. And what we will then do is hopefully take some questions as we go along. I'm not sure how many of those we're going to get, but it'd be quite exciting. And if your question is a particularly cool question with a particularly cool answer, we'll broadcast that question and answer, and then other people can see that and then choose to like it if they wish by just clicking on the little heart. If that Q&A window is in your way at the moment and you're trying to see actually what we're displaying a little bit easier, just in that top corner there, next to where it says Skype Q&A to the left, you'll see there are a couple of arrows. That means you can push the Q&A window out of the way, and then you can carry on working with us. So hopefully that makes sense. Louisa, I forgot completely to say hello and introduce you so that you can introduce yourself. Do by all means say hello.
Hi everyone, looking forward to your questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Louisa. Right, so Louisa is a real person. I wasn't just pretending, and she's here to help us. So let's crack straight on then. What is Teams? Well, there are some great links and information about Teams. Probably you've come here because you've already got Teams and you're either trying to figure out what the hell it all does, or you're trying to understand some more deeper pieces in Teams. As I say, this is a very quick overview session. I'm not going to go into everything on this session, but I will be looking around the interface to show you how it works and pointing out what some of the vast number of buttons does to help make things a little bit easier for you. Teams is the hub for collaboration and teamwork. It takes over from Skype. It's very similar to other products. Typically Slack is one that most people have heard of. And what it does is it brings together those Skype features that you may have used in the past, those Skype for Business features you may have used, like chat or presence or meetings particularly. So it does all of that, which is very similar to other collaboration tools. For example, Zoom does chat and does meetings. But Teams builds on that by making it somewhere where you can create a team and then start to collaborate together on information, files, etc. And it becomes one place for you to collaborate as a group of people. As I say, I've got a separate session on actually working with Teams and collaborating as a team using Teams. That's a little later on today. But I will briefly touch on what the Teams piece is. What this is mainly, as I say, around is a quick overview over the. So, well, it does, as I say, one-to-one and group chats. It does team-based collaboration. And really, the idea behind Teams was to make it one pane of glass to get to various things when you're collaborating as a team. So not only can that team collaborate and chat together and share files and co-author those files, but also it allows you to add various third-party applications or other documents or websites that you might want people to get to quickly, all from one place. And that's where the team collaboration piece comes in. Let's have a quick look around what the interface itself looks like to Teams. Now, Teams can be a little daunting when you first switch it on or first start it up. There seem to be an awful lot of buttons and an awful lot of things that it's trying to tell you about. Let's take a quick look around that. Top left-hand corner, probably the one thing that a lot of people miss and don't spot is there are a back and forward button. Teams at the moment is a single window application. That means that everything that you do, all of your chats, unlike if you've used Skype for Business, they don't pop out into separate windows. They all appear in the same window. So as you click between various chats or Teams or your calendar in Teams, then it means that you may well kind of go, I want to go back a couple of pages to where I was before, and you can choose to do that purely by using those left and right arrows. So that just takes you back and forward, a bit like a browser. Coming down the left-hand side, you'll then see a whole bunch of icons of various different applications. And Teams by default comes with, your organization may have set it up slightly differently, but typically comes with the activity feed, which we'll talk about. That's the little bell at the top left-hand corner. Then comes chat, typically. That's for one-to-one or group chat. Then comes the Teams piece, which is where you'll find any teams that you've been made a member of. Your calendar, which is synchronized with Outlook and looks exactly the same as your Outlook calendar, where you can create Teams meetings from here, or you can do that from Outlook as well, of course. Calling is available in Teams, a bit like it was in Skype. You can call people internally, so anybody who's also running Teams, you can place a call to. But you can also, in some organizations, they may have allowed you to make and receive external phone calls using the same thing. And then lastly, there's files, which will take you through to recent files or other things that you may have been looking at. Coming across the top of the window, you'll notice there is a bar across the top of every window in Teams, which says search for or type a command. As you get more familiar with Teams, you can actually put commands into the top bar and say, I want to start a message with somebody, or I want to open a team. But you can also search for any word or phrase that might have been mentioned in any chat or any team or any meeting, perhaps, that you've been involved in. So I could do a search in here for Cadence Innova, and it would show me every time I've mentioned the words, or anybody has mentioned the words in a conversation with me, Cadence Innova. Across to the right-hand side, you'll then see a picture of me, actually, very, very small. It's not designed to be an eye chart. But if you click on that, that will take you through to settings for Teams, which I recommend as being one of those first things to go and have a look at. What I'm going to do is quickly break out of here just to show you those settings quickly. So Over here, you can see me running Teams. I'm actually in the conversation with Louisa at the moment. If I click on my little icon at the top, AP, or as I say, could be your picture, you'll see there are a number of options here. One of them is to change your status if you want to manually say to people whether you're available or not. You can set a small status message to say to people that you're perhaps busy for an hour or you've got a problem or whatever it might be. And those status messages you can set a time limit on if you want to. Messages in Teams you can save, and that's why that saved option is quite handy. If there is a chat session or a post that you've particularly seen that you wanted to keep an eye on, you can click the triple dots next to that and then save that message, and then you can get back to them here. But the reason I'm trying to bring your attention to settings is that there are a couple of settings which are particularly useful to go and have a look at when you first start with Teams. I have a bit of an eyesight problem, so there are different ways in which you can display Teams. There is a dark mode and there is a high contrast mode. That high contrast mode I find quite useful. It puts a little blue bar around conversations that you're having, and I find that a little bit easier to see. You're typically used to seeing it in the default view. A couple of other things in here that I would draw attention to is to make sure your language is set correctly. That'll make sure that all of the things of spelling, for example, is coming up in the appropriate language. And the other one that I wanted to draw your attention to, particularly in settings, is notifications. One of the things that you'll find when you first get Teams is that Teams seems to have an awful lot of pop-ups and notifications, and you may want to adjust those a little bit. So I recommend popping into settings and looking at the notifications to find out whether you want to just receive a little pop-up, which is the banner, whether you want to receive an email about something. If you're not connected to Teams or you've signed out of Teams, if somebody mentions you, for example, that will also pop up a little pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner, but it'll also send you an email. And you can change all of those. As you'll notice, there are quite a few options down here for various different aspects of Teams. And you can also notice that email piece, you can change how often you receive that. So you may want to get pinged by email if somebody is trying to get hold of you as soon as they try to, or you might want to say, do you know what, I only want an update every hour by email if somebody is trying to get hold of me in Teams. So that's settings, which I think is quite a useful place for you to go to before we get started too quickly into Teams, just to make sure you're comfortable with what's coming through to you. The big bit in the middle, coming back through to my slide deck, is the main window, of course. That's where everything is going to happen. And depending on what you click on, that will choose to put in various different pieces of information. And we'll have a look and see what the different aspects of that then looks like as we go through into the next piece. So that's the Teams main window. There's not too much there to worry, and I've not mentioned every button there is, but that hopefully helps a little bit. Before I go too far on, seeing as I've just talked about the Teams main window and used 13 minutes already, Louisa, have we had any questions in from anybody?
No questions yet.
So far, so good. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's have a look at chats then. So the chat window is very similar to probably most chat applications that you've used. So you'll see all of the history of your chats in that left-hand window. All I've done is click on the chat button. I can see all history of all the chats that I've seen or had conversations with. And they can be a one-to-one chat or to a group of people if you wish. Doesn't have to be just one-to-one person. So at the top there, just next to that search bar that I mentioned before, you'll find there is a new message button. If I click that, that would then start up a new message and I can start cheerfully typing away. Again, let's go and have a quick look at that live. So if I'm here where I'm having a conversation with Louisa already, down at the bottom, you'll find there is a chat box. I can choose to type in a message. I can say, hi, Louisa, which is the most probably original thing to possibly type into a chat, and that then will send a message through to Louisa. If she's signed into Teams, she'll get a little pop-up in the bottom right hand corner, which hopefully she is, and she then may well send a response back, which she has very quickly. Thank you very much. So what I can then do to Louisa's response, which does offer something a little over what Skype Business did, so this is very similar to most chat applications, but Teams goes a little bit further to try and make it a bit more fun. So I can react to Louisa's message. I can either put a little emoji and say that's funny, or I can say I like it, or I can give it a thumbs up. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. And you'll notice there are some triple dots which appear all over the place in Teams. And that usually means there are some more options behind those triple dots. So I could choose, for example, to save this message or mark it unread. or even share it with Outlook and start having a Teams chat and conversation around it. That's a little advanced. I'm not going to go there today. I'm just going to put my thumbs up against it for Louisa and say thank you very much. And just underneath where I type in my message, you'll notice again, a little bit more than perhaps other chat applications, you'll notice there are a whole bunch of icons across the bottom here. I'm not going to touch on all of them, but one thing that Teams does that's quite nice to make things a little bit more interesting and useful is I can, for example, start to click on the little A with the paintbrush next to it, and that brings up some formatting options. If I want to make it bold or italic or add bullets, I can choose to do that. I can choose to set a different priority against the message. So standard messages will be okay. A little exclamation mark shows you that it's an important message, and an urgent message will just keep pinging you every 2 minutes if it's something I'm desperately trying to get your attention for. Be careful with those. They can get a little intrusive. Next to that, you'll find this little paperclip and a little smiley face. The paperclip to attach something, of course, the smiley face to add some emojis to what it is that you've been saying. So, for example, I could put in a little emoji like that, and that will then sort of have the emoji to say, sorry about the messaging. I'm not sure why I'm going to post that. Also, I could choose to put in a sticker. So I've got the option to put in stickers, pictures. I can even attach a video from Stream, and also, if I wanted to, I could even praise things, which gives you some little awards. I'm not going to go too much detail on that. All I'm going to do is just click that message through. You'll notice that that goes through to Louisa straight away. She can choose to react to it. She's already reacted to the message that I put in there to start with earlier on. So chats are fairly straightforward. One last thing that I would point out is that I'm in a one-to-one chat with Louisa here, for example, and you'll notice I've got my chat, I've got files, I've got organization, and I've got activity. These are tabs that you'll find in most windows in Teams, and you can add more tabs. So for example, if I have something that I want to share with Louisa, maybe it's a PowerPoint deck or it's a website that I want both of us to be able to know we can go to quickly when we've been talking to each other, I can choose to add a tab, and I could add that for a website. This will apply, as I say, to any of the windows that you see typically in Teams. So I'm going to put the most original link possible, which is, if I can type, which is Google, of course. I don't need too many of those. So what I'm just going to do is put that in there now. Make sure hopefully I've typed it correctly. What that will do is that will add that tab, and it's added that tab to my chat window with Louisa. So you'll see I've got Google now as being one of the tabs across the top. This tab piece is what's meant by the one pane of glass with Teams. It's designed to bring things together a little bit easier for you. So I have also got various other pieces. Organization, for example, will show you what the organization chart looks for if that's been set up in your environment. The last thing that I would point out on here is if I wanted to quickly give Louisa a video call or give her a phone call, I could click any of these buttons, or I could even share my screen with Louisa as well. And again, there are those triple dots, which allows me to potentially put in some extra pieces and some extra options if I want to. The last thing is that what I may choose to do is I may choose to say, that's brilliant. I want to work with other people. And that's what we're going to come on to next. Let's move away from the live demo for a second and bring us back to where we were looking at on that chat window before. So that's covered chat. Fairly straightforward, got some of those options to make things a little bit more exciting and make things a bit more interesting and interactive than it has been possibly with other applications where it's just a one-to-one chat. Let's have a look at calling then, which is the next one down. I mentioned that briefly when I was in that chat with Louisa a second ago. I could have clicked the call button just to have a chat or conversation with Louisa. But if, for example, I do have external or internal calling available to me in Teams, again, depends on your organization, then what I would then get with calls is not only the ability to go and find somebody and start a call with them, but I also, of course, have a keypad which allows me to go and put in the number, dial the number and make that call. If an inbound call is coming in, then it will ring in Teams for you and you can pick that up using the appropriate piece of equipment. Calling is very, very straightforward. It pretty much is as simple as find the person, click on it and make the call, or as I say, dial the number. So I won't go too much further into calling. But when you're in a call, this is again a bit of a common window, whether you're in a meeting or in a call, slightly different, but usually looks much the same. And what that does is it'll show you, when you're in the call, some options for what you're doing while you are actually in that phone call. So at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice there is something called the stage, and that has a few buttons and icons on it, and also the amount of time you've been on the call. The idea behind this is it allows you to mute or perhaps type in a number. Maybe it's you've dialed a call and you may need to press 1 for sales and 2 for finance or whatever it might be. The infamous triple dots have appeared, as well as a little people icon with a little plus sign next to it. That's to add more people into the call. So if I've made a call directly to Louisa, I could choose to actually place a call through to other people in my organization and bring them into effectively an ad hoc meeting if I wanted to. Those triple dots allow me to swap device. So I may have a headset connected to my PC or a speaker box, which I strongly recommend. Using the microphone and speakers for calls in Teams can be a little bit tricky. The one that's on your laptop, perhaps, they're not the best quality often. So using a headset which has been approved for Microsoft Lync or Skype or Teams, depending on what it's called, would be heartily recommended. And you may want to switch between those. You may want to enter full screen. So if Louisa was sharing something with me, for example, and it's a bit small for me to see, then I can choose the triple dots and I can choose to enter full screen. I can put the call on hold, or I could potentially even transfer the call or consult first. In other words, speak to somebody and then transfer the call too. If I want to hang up, that's what that red button on the far right hand corner does. This stage does cause some people some trouble. So that stage will appear if you move the mouse around in front of the Teams window, but also it will appear if you click the Teams window anywhere else as well. If you want to get rid of it, if it doesn't seem to be disappearing on its own, click the main Teams window again, and it should then disappear, and then don't touch the mouse. Every time you move the mouse, that little stage will appear. So that's calling, and as I say, I wanted to just briefly mention that one. Louisa, I'll pause again at 22 minutes past, nearly halfway through, just to see if there are any things coming in from a question point of view.
Nothing yet.
Oh, I'm obviously doing either a great job or people haven't thought of a brilliant question to ask yet. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Louisa. Well, let's move on to meetings. Yes.
Not just brilliant questions. Any questions are welcomed.
You're absolutely right, Louisa. I didn't know what I was saying to myself there. Yes, brilliant questions, any questions, preferably Teams related, rather than what's the fastest land animal, although I believe that is the cheetah. We could help with that. Thank you for that. So when you join a Teams meeting, and as I say, we've got a special session around Teams meetings later on, which is looking at it much more live on the Teams app itself. But this is to give you an overview. You'll be sent either a link, probably that link for joining the Teams meeting will be in a meeting request, for example. When you click that, you'll usually see this window. If you have Teams installed and you've been regularly using Teams, it may take you straight through to the application running on your PC. But if not, it will bring up this web page and give you some options. And if you've invited people to your meeting from outside your organization, typically they will see this window as well. And the reason why I drew attention to it is that it will allow you to do several things. One is to download the application. If you haven't got Teams and you've scheduled a meeting with somebody who hasn't got Teams, then that's okay. They don't need to have an account or sign in. They can use the application if they want to and download it and then just pop their name in, or they can choose to join on the web, which is typically what people will do if they haven't got Teams. So anybody inside your organization or even outside your organization can join a Teams meeting. But outside your organization, if they haven't got Teams, typically they'll join on the web. And that gives a very similar experience. It looks just very close to the normal Teams desktop app, but it means they can just pop in a name. They don't have to have an account, and they can join the meeting and see what's being shared in the meeting, and also share in the meeting as well if they need to or want to. Best used with either Microsoft Edge or with Chrome. Some of the older browsers like Internet Explorer don't handle it tremendously well, but I would recommend Edge or Chrome if you can. If you've already got the Teams app, because you're already using it perhaps, you'll notice the link just underneath that which says already have the Teams app, launch it now, which will then start up the Teams app and draw you into the meeting. So this is what it looks like when you're about to join the meeting. Very similar look to the web version as to the actual Teams desktop app as well. You'll notice there's the big fat Join Now button in the middle, which is great, but before you click on it, you may want to consider some other options. So you'll notice there are some switches just below that Join Now button in the middle of the screen. On the left-hand side turns off your video, so you may want to make sure your hair is arranged, or I normally put my teeth in first, and I will choose to either have video on or off before I join. In the middle button, which will only be on the desktop application, you can choose to blur your background, which means that what's behind you gets blurred out. Can be handy if you're in a busy or a high traffic. And then next to that one is the mute button, so you can join muted or not, depending on how you want to join the meeting. When you join a meeting, if more than 4 people are in it already, that little switch will be turned off to try and minimize background noise as you join the meeting. You may have experienced meetings where lots of people have joined, they're in Starbucks or in different places. As soon as they join, there's lots of background noise that's being picked up by their microphone. So consider that, but Teams thinks about that for you and immediately makes you muted, which you can change when you join a meeting if there are more than 4 people in it. And just next to that, you can see that this I'm using on my PC a Jabra Pro 9470. That's a headset. If I wanted to change which device I was using, I could click on that too. The reason why I wanted to really kind of stop you before you hit that Join Now button is across the bottom, you'll see there are some options for audio off and for phone audio. Now, phone audio may not apply to your organization. It depends if you have an appropriate audio conferencing license. But if you're in a room or somebody else has already joined the meeting and you don't need the audio piece, you just want to see what's being shared, then make sure you click the audio off option, and that prevents echo appearing in your Teams meeting as you join. And the other option there, that phone audio piece, as I say, depending on whether your organization supports it or not, allows you to join the meeting by phone, even though you want to perhaps join via the web desktop app, or the web or the desktop app, so that you can see what's being shared. So once I've clicked all of those things and set myself up and know how I'm joining the meeting and I'm comfortable with that, I can then click Join Now, and that takes me into the meeting. That again shows that stage that I was talking about when we were looking at calls earlier on. And what that allows you to do, as I say, is see how long the meeting has been running, turn your video on or off, mute yourself. There's an extra option in here because I can share easily inside this meeting, so I can hit that share button. Again, we've got the triple dots. And again, we've also got, of course, the ability to add more people, the ability to chat to people inside the meeting, and the ability to hang up. If I did want to present, then I would click on that present button and then choose the appropriate screen or application. And the triple dots allow you to have some of these options in here. As I say, we've got a special session just dedicated to Teams meetings happening a little later on this morning. I'd recommend coming through to that, and we will talk a little bit more about some of what these options allow you to do when you're in the meeting. I'll pause briefly. Louisa, you maybe there's been a question. You never know your luck.
No, nothing.
Nothing yet?
No.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll just quickly mention that Q&A session. If you're about halfway through this broadcast and you're listening and you've picked it up as a broadcast some other time, the link will work for up to 90 days. So you can click on it, come back to this broadcast and go backwards and forwards again if you want to. But the Q&A window will be open and closed from time to time during the next week so that you can post in a question if you wished, and we'll keep an eye on that Q&A window to see if there are any questions coming through. Let's have a quick look at the calendar then. So that's that option where it says calendar in the left-hand nav, that navigation bar on the left-hand side shows you your calendar. It's synchronized completely with your Outlook calendar. What I can choose to do is I can choose to change the view in the top right-hand corner between day and week. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Essentially, it's the same as your Outlook calendar. If you want to join a Teams meeting from it, then you'll notice that all of the Teams meetings and potentially Skype meetings, if you still have those too, will typically have the join button right front and center next to the meeting. But one of the really great things about Teams is it will tell you when the meeting starts. So when somebody starts the meeting, you'll see a little pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner that says Angus has started the meeting. And directly from there, you can choose to join, if you have the desktop app, of course, or you could choose to message the meeting to say, I'll be 5 minutes late. But also, if you go back to the calendar view, if the meeting has started, that meeting displayed in your calendar will change color, and it lets you know that there are people in the meeting and the meeting has already started. So the calendar view is handy, as I say, shows you a few different views as to whether your meeting is happening or not. Let's pop on through to what the next option is which is the team piece that I wanted to mention to you. So as I say, Teams does those things that Skype for Business has been doing quite successfully, or for the last few years, giving you that chat, call and meeting functionality. But Teams adds a whole new way of collaborating, as I say, in one pane of glass. So one of the things I was talking about when you were chatting is you can have a chat with one person if you wish, but you can have a chat with more than one person. You just add those people into your chat window. You can even rename that group of people to be something else, the Fab team, for example. What that allows you to do is to have very much a group chat experience, very similar to the way in which you may have worked in WhatsApp, for example. But there are some advantages to creating a team, which means it brings people together and gives you some space as well. So it's great when you have a group of people that you want to keep together and collaborate with, or perhaps you've started a project and you want to keep those project team members all together in one place. So you get a group chat, which comes with the team, of course, but you also get all the other Office 365 features which have been molded into using or leveraged with Teams. So you'll get a SharePoint site so you can collaborate with files and share stuff between you and that team of people. You get a notebook in case you want to start capturing notes and have notes in one place. And you also get something called Planner, which allows you to do some rudimentary project planning using that Office 365 tool. We're not going to be touching those today. If anyone has any particular requirements around that, then please do let us know. Either give us some email to opportunities@cadenceinova.com or post it in the Q&A window perhaps, and we can talk further about that. One of the other things that I can do is I can separate topics or subjects into different things. So for example, I might have a project, I might have a launch channel, a training channel or a support channel, and that just allows you to separate out conversations so that they have a little bit more sense to them and not every conversation in the team is happening in one place. But it also allows you to have those tabs I showed you a little earlier on, and allows you to then choose between those tabs and have a different tab set for each channel. As I say, again, there is a further session today that's going to go much further into collaborating with a team using Teams. This is giving you very much, hopefully, a brief overview. So I can add those tabs, as I've mentioned, and a quick word about permissions when you create a team is that everyone in the team can access all the features of the team. So they can post chats, they can share and collaborate through SharePoint, they can look at the planner, they can go through to the OneNote as well. The idea behind it is to allow you to collaborate in one place. And one last point, again, depending on your organization settings, it may be different, it may not, but by default, you can also add guests. So people outside your organization that are using Teams, and they don't even have to be using Teams. It may be somebody who is you just want to collaborate with who hasn't started with Teams yet. But you can add people from outside your organization and then have a collaborative area, perhaps with you and a partner or a supplier, so that you can then collaborate together, not just inside your organization, but outside as well. As I say, there is another session on Teams, collaborating with a team, using Teams a little later on today. This is the Teams main window. As I say, I'm not going to spend too much time around it because we have a separate session on it, but you'll notice that what you're seeing when you click on the Teams button is a list of the teams that you are a member of down the left-hand side. And then each team that you have, as you can see, has a channel set underneath it. So for example, I'm looking at the MS Teams immersion group, and underneath that I have general, and I have a couple of other channels. Each of those channels separating up that subject or group or conversations that you want to group together. Very, very similar from a chat point of view to that single normal chat that we were talking about earlier on. So I can choose to chat in a window, I can choose to add bold and italic, etc. Let me pop quickly across through to the live session for a second, just to show you a couple of things that are quite useful from a Teams point of view. So here I am in my demo team, for example. Here are those channels that I was talking about underneath. Every time you create a team, you'll always have a general channel. If you want to join or create a team, we'll be talking a little bit more about that in the other session. You can join or create a team down the bottom here in the left-hand corner. But I can now start doing some posts in this little channel. So I can say, this is, well, I can try and type it, this is great. What that'll do is that'll post that message into the channel. Now, Louisa might be monitoring that and having a look at that. That'd be great. And if she is, she may reply in a second or two. What also I'd point out is that, again, like I said in that chat window, I was having that with Louisa one-to-one. I've also got the ability to add tabs, as we talked about before. And if I click on the files area, that takes me through to the SharePoint site, if you like, to see the files that have been shared with the team of people. Now, I haven't shared anything yet. I can do that later on, but I can upload through here. I can even open it in SharePoint and then start to collaborate on files that I might have put into the team. Again, Louisa has replied already. That's fantastic. What I would say is much the same as with that single chat. I can go up to Louisa's message. I can choose if I want to react to it. So as you see, as I hover over the message, if I can get my arrow to go where it's supposed to go, thank you very much. I can then choose to like that message if I want to, and it gives a little bit of feedback to say that I've already seen that message and save some of that thank you and etc. backwards and forwards. One thing I would point out is that you can @mention people a little bit like Twitter and Facebook. So if I @mention the Louisa, for example, who is a member of the team, what that will do is it will make sure that Louisa gets a little message, and that's where this activity feed comes up. So I might say hello again, the most remarkably original message. And because I've mentioned Louisa, that will definitely appear in her feed. You'll notice that if I'm just typing away in a team, then that may not appear in that feed. I'm going to talk about that activity feed a bit more in a second. I don't have to mention people. I can mention the whole group as well. If I wanted to get everybody in the group's attention, then I can choose to @team demo and say, please keep up. And would quite nice if I hadn't actually do that. Let's try that again. So team demo, just type in the first few letters of the name of the team, and then I can put in whatever. So if Louisa mentioned that team as well, that will appear in my activity feed, and I'm going to show you what that looked like in a second. But very briefly, that's what the team does. It allows you to have that group of people as a single group of people with permissions to see whatever it is that they're seeing, but also allows you to start to organize things into channels, have conversations around files, attach files to that conversation. And as I say, we will be looking at this in a little more depth at the session today. I mentioned about channels, just that reinforcement that channels you don't have to create. When you create a team, you'll always get a general channel, but you may want to separate out those conversations into something that are more relevant as topics. But also you may want to have different tabs, because you may want to say, okay, a particular group of people that are in training, for example, want quickly to be able to get through to the training website or to training resources. So there is an advantage to creating tabs to keep channels to keep various things in different places. So I mentioned that activity feed. The activity feed, that little bell in the top left-hand corner, is a really useful option to keep an eye on. It will show you when things change. It will show you when you've been mentioned. And you remember when we were looking, and if you need to go back, by all means, rewind back through the session, when we were looking earlier on at those settings and those notification pieces, what we wanted to do was to make sure that banners were appearing, or it was appearing in my banner and feed. This is what that activity feed is. It's a great thing to keep an eye on. If people mention you or mention a team that you're in, or anything that you've been trying to follow or keep an eye on will appear in that feed. And as you make a change to it, that little bell will have a number next to it, and it will tell you how many things have been going on in your activity feed that you haven't seen so far. So worth keeping an eye on that activity feed and leveraging that as being one great place to go to. The last one to mention is files, and it's little known and little used sometimes, is that files application. And if you click on files, it will take you through to files that you've been working on that have been stored in Office 365. So whether they've been stored perhaps in a SharePoint site or in a Teams SharePoint site, or even if it's in OneDrive, then you can choose to go to that. One other thing that you might do is if somebody has attached a file to a post or a chat message, rather than sharing it with you through OneDrive or SharePoint, then you may have downloaded it. And one of the things that can be a little tricky to find is where things that you've downloaded in Teams appears. Well, if you click on files and go to the downloads area, then you'll see where things that you've downloaded from Teams has been. We're getting through to what I wanted to just briefly touch on, which is the Teams mobile app. If you've used Skype for Business perhaps in the past, the mobile app for that was a little bit poor. If you were having a conversation in the mobile app, it didn't appear very well in the Skype for Business app as well. But Teams, particularly its mobile version, is particularly full-featured, has most of the options that you might want to look at, and allows you to join meetings, have chats, see what's going on in your session, allows you to see what's going on in your Teams. You can even share and present from the Teams mobile app. So if you have the PowerPoint app or PowerPoint deck perhaps installed on your phone or mobile device, you can choose to present that. You can even share the actual mobile device screen. Now, there is a separate session. It sounds like I'm repeated and stuck on a loop. There is a separate session on joining with and looking at the Teams mobile app that's later on today as well. Please come along to that session if you'd like to learn a little bit more about how the mobile app works. I'm not going to talk through too much of it today, other than to say I heartily recommend going to the Google Play Store or to the Apple App Store and downloading and installing the Microsoft Teams application. It also allows you to control how often you get notifications on your mobile device, because you might want to, for example, at 6 o'clock go, I don't want to get pinged from Teams. So you can even set quiet hours to stop you from being perhaps nagged too much from Teams when you need to actually be doing something else. So the Teams mobile app, very simple to install. As I say, go to the appropriate app stores, install it from there and sign in using your normal credentials. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about the Teams mobile app, then come through to the session that we have later on today. Something I wanted to briefly kind of touch on is where to go for more help. And the one place that I would recommend heartily is support.office.com/Teams. There you will find all the resources that Microsoft have put together to help you with training on Teams. There is a wealth of information. It could take you some considerable hours to get through all of it, but it has been chunked up into some convenience spaces. It will obviously go into a lot more detail than I've been talking about here today. It's been very much an overview session today. But what I would say is there is video-based training, there is text-based training, so document-based if you want to go through documents and you prefer that. But that's probably my first port of call to go and find out some more information. If you've got something you'd like to talk to us about, perhaps, and we have a wealth of resources on offer, then perhaps what I would suggest you do is click through to the website in the top right hand corner of this broadcast, and you'll find contact us links through there, or as I say, drop us an email through to opportunities@cadenceinova.com, and we can then see how we can engage with you and help you with some of the remote working situations you might be having at the moment. That pretty much takes me through to the end, and I'm running very close to time, which I'm staggered by myself. We will just check to see if there have been any questions that may have come through. Louisa, what have you got?
Yes. Can you let us know why you're using Skype to conduct this session rather than Teams itself?
That's a brilliant question. Yes. So you'll notice we're using a tool called Skype Broadcast. The reason I'm using Skype Broadcast today is that I wanted to make it as easy as possible for any one of you joining. If I used other solutions like GoToWebinar or Teams Live Events, which would be a great solution to use for a broadcast, by the way, we haven't got a session on Teams Live Events, but I recommend you having a look at it, then that would mean you need to know what you're doing and kind of to a certain extent open up the Teams app on the desktop or on the web, and it became a little bit complicated. This is very simple. It allows you to do a broadcast straight through to the browser without having to install anything. You just click on a link and you can see it. And that's the reason why I chose to use Skype Broadcast for this, because it's aimed at people who may not have used Teams in the past. I hope that answers your question. Have we got any more, Louisa? That was a good one.
Nothing else.
Wicked. Excellent news. Okay. So as I say, that really and truly has been 45 minutes of quite a lot of intense stuff of me moving around screens and showing you various different options. I do want to thank you for your time today. We've just run to 1:45, so 45 minutes and we're done. As I say, you can go through this. You can click on the same link as many times as you like to review the session and pause and rewind and go through it as you wish. I hope you found the session today useful. There are other sessions available, as I say, through the link that you joined. This one, you'll find there are dedicated sessions for Teams meetings, for collaborating as a team using Teams, and at that Teams mobile app as well. By all means, come through to our site and sign up and join those. Otherwise, I think pretty much we've come to the end, and I really appreciate you all joining. Thank you very much. Louisa, I'll give you a last question chance, and then we can say goodbye.
Nothing from me, I'm afraid.
No problem. As I say, that question and answer window we'll be keeping open. Look out for announcements through it to tell you when it's open or not. You'll be able to post a question when it's open. If you do have anything, please do come through with that. Otherwise, I will say thank you very much to everyone for joining. And at a minute over the time, I will say thank you and have a great rest of your day. Please stay safe, stay well, stay at home and look after yourselves. Thank you very much. Louisa, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.